Baruch atah asherah anat malacha ha'olam, asher kiddushani mitzvotav v'tzivani l'hitatif latzitzit. Good morning, Sakiv. You're always the first one here. It's very nice. How are you doing? Good morning, Freedom. Hello, hello. I would not say that I am over COVID, Sakiv. I still have a runny nose and a pretty nasty cough. And more to the point, my commune is not over COVID in that there are some social symptoms that hit intentional communities particularly hard. And those social symptoms are still inflamed. But that's okay. Because you get sick and then you heal. And your body gets sick and you heal it, and your social system gets sick and you heal that too. And you just continue to live.
Well, what if it doesn't?
Then you die. And then someone else lives in your place.
It doesn't sound so bad. Somebody else just takes my
Yeah.
Okay.
Good morning, Batya. How are you? Freedom, you're correct. You know my location. To the extent that I reveal it. What was that? Booby Valley. Yes, I live in a valley in the mountains, and when you look at the shapes that the mountains make just right, they look like breasts. And so we say that we are the denizens of Eastbrook Valley. Oh no, that's wrong. Of Booby Valley. I'm a little thick today. Blessings to everybody here. Good morning. Well, you're one of my favorite on TikTok too, Freedom. So, one interesting impact of getting sick is that I've been sleeping extremely well. I don't really understand it. I guess my body's like, yeah, you actually really need to rest. I've been sleeping the whole night through, and I haven't been able to sleep the whole night through in months. So, I'm sleeping a lot. Like, I slept like 13 hours last night, I think. Like, some absurd quantity, but I trust my body that I need it. Shalom. Shabbat shalom. Good morning. Good morning. So, we will start today by saying Shema in the Vahafta, as we do, old words from the book of Deuteronomy. And then we will move on. We started yesterday. It wasn't yesterday. I skipped yesterday because I had to talk to my father about transphobia. But before that, we started reading this book by Plutarch called On Isis and Osiris, detailing the myth of Isis and Osiris from the perspective of a priest of Apollo. Which is, not a perspective that anyone holds here today. And then we will say Arati and Kaddish. Shalom. Good morning and shalom. How are you? Nice to see you, Vintage Soul. I hope you're doing well today. Shema Yisrael Asher Eloheinu Yahweh Echad. Vahafta et anat Elohecha ובכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר נחים מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לעוד על ידיך וחיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. וחיה כי ויחיה אלוהיך אל הארץ אשר נשבע לאבותיך לאברהם ליצחק וליעקב לתת לך ערים גדולות וטובות אשר לא בנית ובתים מלאים כל טובה אשר למילאת וברות עצובים אשר לא הוספת כערים וזיתים אשר לא נטעת והלכת ושבת ישמר לך פן תשכח את יהוה אשר תישאך מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים. And you shall love Yahweh Eloheinu with all your heart and all your soul and all your might. And these words that I'm repeating to you today, teach them to your children. Recite them when you wake up and when you go to bed, and when you are traveling and when you are at home. And you shall bind them as a symbol on your hand, and let them serve as a sign on your forehead, and inscribe them on the doorposts of your houses and on your gates. Repeat these words, okay? Repeat them. No explanation required, no interpretation required, no exegesis required. They just are syllables that ask to be re-enlivened. So do it. And, I don't know, there's no real reason to do it. Could easily ignore them. I do it. I do it because the ritual is comforting to me. Basically. Like, I could tell you any number of meanings or stories, right? About phylogenetic trees and inherited trauma and all these sort of things. But at this point, I say the words because they comfort me. And it's not actually any more complicated than that. But I share them with you because you comfort me. And it's not actually any more complicated than that. So, shall we move to Egypt? So this is a really beautiful image. I bought this version of the book because I wanted to be able to show you all this image. You have Isis with Horus sitting on her lap, about to feed. And do you want me to turn on the monitor so you can see? Okay. I'll be right back, friends. Is that okay? I mean, it kind of is.
There's red dye.
Yeah, because I have red sheets and I lean my back against this wall so frequently that it is stained with me. And I guess that looks like flame. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for being you. What a thing to say to someone. Thank you for being you. Thank you for existing. I'm glad you all exist. I'm very grateful you all exist. So, when we left off in this story of Isis and Osiris, there was a theogony, right? And Plutarch describes 5 gods being born, 5 siblings, of which the relevant ones are Isis and Osiris and Seth. But of course, instead of calling him Set, he's called Typhon, even though Typhon is Greek. Typhon was the sea monster that Zeus killed, right? The serpent monster. But like, Plutarch is correct, or maybe we have this interpretation because of Plutarch, right? Like, who's to say? But there are analogies between these different gods, right? And so Set and Typhon were related, probably more deeply than just in Plutarch's Apollonian mind. In any case, there's a banquet, and Set creates a coffin, a custom-made sarcophagus. And he says, who's going to fit into this sarcophagus? I'll give a reward to anyone who can fit in just perfectly. And Osiris, who's a tool, is like, sure, yeah, I'll go inside that sarcophagus. That couldn't be a trap at all. And of course, he fits perfectly into the sarcophagus, and then Set closes the lid and nails it shut and pours lead over the nail so that no one can ever open it up. And then he casts it into the Nile. And the sarcophagus filled with Osiris flows away. And now we will continue on and see what happens next. Good morning, sunshine and ravioli. How are you? The first to discover the mischief were the Pans and the Satyrs, inhabiting the country round Chemis, and to give intelligence about what happened, whence the sudden terrors and fears of the multitude are to the present day called panics. Isis, on the news, sheared off one of her tresses, put on a mourning robe, whence the city, even to the present day, has the name Copto, I beat the breast, but others think the name signifies bereavement, from Coptine, to derive. As she wandered about everywhere, not knowing what to do, she met no one without speaking to him. Nay, even when she fell in with little children, she inquired of them about the coffer, these last chanced to have seen it, and told her the branch of the river through which Typhon's accomplices had let the tress drift into the sea. From this circumstance, the Egyptians believe that little children possess the faculty of prophecy, and that especially the future is foreshown by their cries when they are playing in the temple courts, and calling out whatever it may be. And having discovered that he, Typhon, had fallen in love and copulated with his sister in ignorance, as Osiris had done with himself, and seeing the proof thereof in the garland of the metallite flower which he had left behind him with Nephthys, she sought for the infant, for she had brought it forth at once. Through her fear of Typhon, she found it at last with trouble and difficulty through the dogs guiding her to the place. This infant Isis nursed, and he grew up to guard and minister, being denominated Anubis, and said to watch for the gods, just as dogs do for men. So that was a little unclear.
Didn't make any sense. They were talking about looking for Osiris,
And then she's
something
pregnant?
about incest, and then she has to look for the baby that she got from incest from the dude who just killed her husband. Like,
Yeah. Yes. This is the best version of the story we have, right? And I don't like the voice at all. I don't like that it's Plutarch providing us a third-person summary. Like, I wish it were in verse, and it was just recounting the myth instead of, like, Plutarch's commentary. And because his commentary is always very racialized. The Egyptians think this, and the Greeks think this. And not that he's being offensive, but he's just being, like, an academic, and I want mythology. But yeah, there's something about how Set and Osiris were both interested in Isis, and they both had babies with her, and Anubis is born. And I guess it is unclear whether Anubis is Osiris' son or Set's, but like that's kind of the deal. Anyway, we can continue on. Proceeding thence, she learnt by inquiry that the chest had been washed up by the sea at a place called Byblus, and that the surf had gently laid it under an erica tree. This erica, the most lovely plant, glowing up very large in a very short time, had unfolded, embraced, and concealed the coffer within itself. The king of the place, being astonished at the size of the plant, having cut away the clump that concealed the coffer from sight, set the latter up as a pillar to support his roof. They tell how Isis, having learned all this by divine breath of fame, came to Byblos, and sitting down by the side of a spring, all dejected and weeping, spoke not a word to any other persons, but saluted and made friends of the maidservants of the queen by dressing their hair for them, and infusing into their bodies a wonderful perfume out of herself. When the queen saw her maids again, she felt a longing to see the stranger, whose hair and whose body breathed of ambrosial perfume, and so she was sent for, becoming intimate with the queen, was made a nurse of her infant. The king's name, they say, was Malakander, and some call the king's name, they say, was Malakander. Herself some call Asarte, others Susis, others Ninano, I can't pronounce these names, others Ninano, who is the same with the Greek Atheanes. Isis is said to have suckled the child by putting, instead of her nipple, her finger into his mouth, and by night she singed away the mortal parts of his body. She turned herself into a swallow and flew around the pillar until the queen watched her, and cried out when she saw her children all on fire, so she took away the boy's immortality. Then the goddess, manifesting herself, asked for the pillar of the roof, and having removed it with the greatest ease, she cut away the erica that surrounded it. This plant she wrapped up in a linen cloth, pouring perfume over it, and gave it in charge to the king. And to this day the people of Byblos venerate the wood, which is preserved in the temple of Isis. The coffin she clasped in her arms, and wailed so loud that the younger of the king's sons died of fright at it, and the elder she took with her, and putting the coffer on board a ship, put it to sea, and when the river Phaedrus sent forth too rough a gale, she grew wrath, and dried up the stream. It's quite a lot. We will pause there for the next part of the story. So, if we had to summarize, after Typhon's, Seth's cronies set the coffin full of Osiris down the river, Isis mourns and goes looking everywhere for it. She asks little children, and maybe she's pregnant and gives birth to a god, and then she keeps looking, and then she goes to Lebanon, and she finds the king of Byblos, and she says, "Hey, dude, you built your palace out of my lover's coffin. Maybe don't do that." And he's like, "Sure, you can just take apart my palace and have the coffin back. Sounds good, because you really impressed my wife with your good smells." And so then she takes the coffin back, and she sets it on a ship, and she heads back to Egypt. And we will read the next part of the story another day. Yeah, I am still sick. Breathing is hard. Speaking out loud for long periods of time is challenging. So, now we're going to say Arati. So the word Arati means flame here in Sanskrit. And so you will praise all the various names of the flame. The names of the flame, the flames of the names. Arati goes like this. Jaya Jaya Arati Vina Vinayaka Vina Vinayaka Shri Ganesha Jaya Jaya Arati Subramanya Subramanya Kartikeya Jaya Jaya Arati Venugopala Venugopala Venuola Papa Vidura Navanita Chora Jaya Jaya Arati Venkantaramana Venkantaramana Sankataharana Sita Rama Radhe Shama Jaya Jaya Arati Gauri Manohara Gauri Manohara Bhavani Sankara Sambasara Shiva Uma Maheshwara Jaya Jaya Arati Raja Rajeshwari Raja Rajeshwari Tripura Sundari Mahalakshmi Mahasaraswati Mahakali Mahashakti Jaya Jaya Arati Anjaneya Anjaneya Hanumanta Jaya Jaya Arati Dattatreya Dattatreya Trimurti Vatara Jaya Jaya Arati Adityaya Adityaya Bhaskaraya Jaya Jaya Arati Sanistaraya Sanistaraya Bhaskaraya Jaya Jaya Arati Sankarachaya Sankarachaya Advaita Gurave Jaya Jaya Arati Sadgurunata Sadgurunata Shivananda Jaya Jaya Arati Vishnu Devananda Vishnu Devananda Vishnu Devananda Jaya Jaya Arati Agastya Munaye Agastya Munaye Shirama Priyaye Jaya Jaya Arati Ayapa Samine Ayapa Samine Dharma Shastave Jaya Jaya Arati Jesus Gurave Moses Gurave Buddha Gurave Jaya Jaya Arati Muhammad Gurave Guru Nanak Gurave Samastya Gurubho Namaha Jaya Jaya Arati Venugopala. Twameva mata Jabita Twameva Twameva Bandusha Saka Twameva Twameva Vidya Javinam Twameva Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Kayena Macha Vanasendriyarva Budyat Manava Prakrite Sabhavat Karomyat Yat Sakalam Parasmahi Narayana iti sarmar payami Savadamam pravichaya mamikam savanam vija Aham svasarva papayo mokshayami masucha. Whatever actions I perform with my body, speech, mind, senses, my nature, my intellect, or my emotions, all these I dedicate to you. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Good morning, Dr. Punk. How are you? Deep breaths. Deep breaths. I am still short of breath. I don't know if you can hear it. You probably can. I can feel it. So, now we will say Mourner's Kaddish. A prayer of grief, a prayer of mourning, a time to remember what we had, which we no longer do, or what we still have with us, those painful patterns that we can't seem to get rid of. Either one. And so we say Kaddish to grieve together. For the last 2,500 years, my ancestors have been saying these words in response to death. Yid Kadal, Vid Kadash, Shema Rabba. Vyama Divrach Yote, Vyam Lichmal Chate, Vachayachon, Vyamachon, Vchayed Kol Beit Yisrael, Bagala, Visman Kari, Vim, Amen. Yehe Shema Rabba, Mivarach Le'alam, Almei, Almaya, Vit Barach, Vishtabach, Vit Ba'ar, Vit Ramam, Vit Nasei, Vit Hadar, Vit Ale, Vit Alal Shema de Kudisha, Barichu, Leila Min Kol Birchata, Vishirata, Tush Birchata, Venechimata, Jamiran Vyama, Vimr, Amen. Yehe Shlama Rabba, Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu, V'achol Yisrael, Vimru, Amen. Ose Shalom, Bimramav, Huya Ase Shalom, Aleinu, V'achol Yisrael, Vimru, Amen. Ose Shalom, Bimramav, Huya Ase Shalom Aleinu, V'alechol Yisrael, Vimru, Vimru, Amen. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I will see you here again tomorrow to say these words once more. Until then, I hope you have a really lovely day. If you enjoyed this stream, if you would like to support this work that we do here together, please check out the link in my bio. You can sign up on Patreon or leave a one-time tip. And it really helps. Truly it does. As do the fire emojis, Dr. Punk. You're so consistent. And I really value consistency. So thanks. I'll see you here tomorrow. I hope you have a really lovely day. Farewell.